Hi, welcome. My name is Charlotte. I love colorful and sparkly makeup. I also love Shop My Stashes, and this is the second time that I'm doing a Shop My Stash here on my channel. If you're interested in content about using the makeup you have, resisting buying new makeup, playing around and swatching things, then I would love it if you'd subscribe to my channel, like this video. So I did my first Shop My Stash in January. I had thought about doing it monthly, but I don't know, I didn't find that I really had the time or the space on my channel to do a February update, so I'm just going to be doing these sort of as I can. So rather than being a March specific Shop My Stash, I'm thinking of this sort of as like a springtime Shop My Stash. First, I'm going to start by updating you on the items I selected last month and how much I've been using them. I think last time I did this I started with complexion, so why don't we go ahead and start there. I know I had pulled out my ColourPop Pretty Fresh foundation. I had actually planned to franken this into a shade that would be less yellow and more suited to my skin tone. I tried to do that, but unfortunately it didn't mix very well. It didn't really work. And I decided I didn't care enough to mix to get this to work for my skin tone. It means basically mixing at least 3 things on my face, and that is just too much to ask of myself. I wasn't pulling for this, and I don't actually really like the finish of this anyway. I don't really like how it sits on my skin. So I just decided to cut my losses and declutter this, and I actually feel great about that. I have been using this ColourPop Tinted Moisturizer. I like this a lot better. I prefer the finish, but it's not as much coverage as I prefer these days. I am trying to finish this year. It wasn't explicitly in my Shop My Stash this rotation, but I was using it a lot. And I've also sort of rediscovered mixing it with this concealer, which I had pulled for the Shop My Stash. I think that was a nice way of boosting the coverage of this, so I do plan to continue using these together as I try and finish this. And this NYX Concealer Serum in the shade Light, this is a very brightening shade for me, and so I consider it sort of my winter shade. I wanted to get some use on it, and I still want to keep it in the Shop My Stash because come summer I'm not going to be reaching for this. I want to get a little bit more use out of it going forward by mixing it with that tinted moisturizer. I had also brought in this Poreless Putty Primer. I had the goal of hitting pan on this, and I did. So I was really happy about that, and actually once I had hit that goal, I moved this out of my Shop My Stash rotation, and I had put this liquid Poreless Putty Primer in its place, just because this is like a deluxe sample size, and so really it makes more sense for me to focus on this to get that out of my collection. Let's see, I didn't keep like solid numbers for my concealer and foundation products, but for the primers I did, and I used this Poreless Putty Primer 14 times. And I know I used this a couple times, but I don't have it on my tracking sheet, so I think I forgot to track that. I had a couple of like bronzer contouring products in here. So this is the Fenty Matchsticks in the shade Amber. This is a contour shade, and I thought this would be good for wintry makeup. I used it 7 times. Then this Walnut Grain, this is from Romand. It's the Better Than Shape like bronzer contour line that they have. I've used this a total of 16 times in January and February. I do think I'm going to probably keep this pulled out just because it is in my deck of panning, and I've been sort of making a place for those items on my vanity, but I will probably pull in another bronzer as well to have like a cream option. And by the way, last time I didn't have these containers yet, so I did get these specifically for like my Shop My Stash items to sit out on my dresser, and then I have like a little acrylic organizer where I kind of keep things that I keep some things from my Shop My Stash, some things from my project pans, and some things just because it's the place where they fit best. So that's kind of a jumble. I decided not to like actually take my camera over there and show you, but these have been really handy. I like having my Shop My Stash stuff set apart, and I just got these on Shop My Say. For highlighter last time, I pulled out these two cool toned highlighters. This is the shade Pearl from Physicians Formula, and it's just a white, like a cool toned white. I used this a ton. Well, I used this 12 times in 2 months. I guess that's actually not a ton. But I really liked that for like cool toned looks, and it's not like aggressively cool toned either. I was wearing makeup more in January. For the last half of February, I don't know, I've kind of just been busy with other things. I haven't really been wearing makeup as often. And then this is the shade Weird Sister. It's a loose highlighter from Crow and Pebble, and it's just a really like icy kind of lavender highlighter. I actually only used this once, and I'm thinking about pressing this at some point because I think it's the looseness of it that really makes me not reach for this. So having it in my Shop My Stash turned out not to be enough to make me reach for it. I think pressing it would give this guy a better chance of success in my collection. So this blush had actually found its way out of my Shop My Stash baskets, but this is the e.l.f. Cheek Duo in the shade Watermelon, and I really like this color. It's just a very middle of the road neutral light pink. It works really well for just about any look that I would do, and so I like the color. I think the formula for this is like just okay. I do think it looks like a little bit powdery and flat on my face. I don't know. I'm interested in trying more elegant powder blush formulas in this color. So I'm thinking that this one might not actually be something that I end up keeping, which is a surprise because I was really enjoying this, but I think it's the color that I enjoy. And the formula, I'm like still feeling out whether I enjoy powder blush formulas, but I think I don't enjoy this. So I reached for this 5 times during this rotation. The other blush I had pulled was this Cumulus shade in the AOA Studio Plush Blush liquid blush formula. This is sort of another fail. I like this color. I like the idea of this as a liquid blush, and I like the idea of liquid blush in general, like the juiciness of it, but I don't know if liquid blush is for me. This is also like a $1 formula, so I don't know if it's just that. But I find this lifts my foundation. I just never reach for it because it risks ruining my entire base. I reached for this one time. I think it ruined my base and I washed it off or covered it with something else. So I think this is another one that I'm probably going to be decluttering in the near future. Okay, moving on to lip products. I pulled a bunch of like cool toned nudes for this rotation. So one of them is the Merit lipstick in the shade Baby. It's a quite cool toned, opaque, milky kind of satin formula. When I say opaque, I just mean that it's more on the milky side rather than like a translucent glossy lipstick. I feel like those are the two types of like light coverage lipsticks you end up with, and this is more on the milky side. I also had the shade Happy from the e.l.f. Sheer Slick line in this rotation, and I would say that was a very similar color to this, but it was more of the translucent glossy kind of finish rather than this milky satin. And I preferred the way that one was looking just because I have like more warm toned lips, so having my natural lip color be able to show through a little bit helps me pull off a cool toned color a little bit more naturally. So I was really enjoying that e.l.f. shade, and then I misplaced it. So I don't have it for this rotation. I think it might have just gotten like tucked away in some pocket that I'm forgetting about. I have looked, I can't find it, so I don't know. Hopefully it's not gone forever. But that was something that I was like wanting to try more, get my thoughts about for this rotation, and I did, and I loved it. So RIP to that, I hope it turns up. As for this Merit lipstick, I like it. Like I'm using this now when I would use the e.l.f. Oh, I'm sorry, that was not the Sheer Slick lipstick. It was the Hydrating Core Shine, whatever. Yeah, I don't love this. I like it, I don't love it. And that's more about the shade than it is about the formula. As for this lip gloss, this is looking pretty janky now, but this is just an e.l.f. lip gloss in the shade Cookie Dreams. I had been holding on to this even though it only had a few uses left because I wanted to use them for January. It's a black gloss, like a very sheer black gloss, so felt very much like cool toned January vibes to me. And I did use up those last few uses. Now I really need to like actually take this to Sephora and recycle the container because it is looking really gross. And this wasn't actually officially part of this last rotation, but when I finished this e.l.f. lip gloss, I kind of pulled in this Essence lip gloss. I think the shade is called Dusky Rose, but it's rubbed off. Just a pretty basic pinky nude. And yeah, I've been wearing this quite a bit. Another cool toned lipstick, this is the e.l.f. Sheer Slick formula, and it's the shade Black Cherry, which is sort of like a black honey dupe. See what I mean, by the way, about this? This is the translucent kind of formula, this is the milky kind of formula. I like this alright. I don't know, it is a bit much on me, but I find that if I put on a gloss and then just kind of like tap on just a little bit of this, just sort of livens up the look, brightens it up a little bit. So I used this a good few times. By the way, I do not track my lip usage just because I am constantly like putting things in my bag, reapplying. It would just be too much information to try and track it all. This next one is the NYX Soft Matte Lip Cream in the shade Cairo. This is very much a concealer lips shade, which is a look I used to really like, and I've tried hard to make various versions of this color work for me. I don't think I like this. It's just that it turns out really streaky. I think if I had a color like this in a formula more like the Kaleidos Lip Clays, then maybe that would work better. Whether it's the shade or the formula, I don't really like this one, and this is definitely a candidate for just going ahead and decluttering. The problem is that I actually had this shade in the past and I decluttered it and then I repurchased it because I think for whatever reason I just covet these concealer lips shades. So if anything, having this helps me resist buying another version of it, but overall I don't use this. I didn't really use this in this rotation. I think I just tried it out once and then didn't like how it looked and used something else instead. This is another one that sort of ended up somewhere else. This is the ColourPop lipstick in CA Love. I think I had pulled this into my Shop My Stash for last month, but I'm just hoping to get a lot of usage on this year. And yeah, it was something I used whenever I was doing like a really warm toned look. So it's good to have it just out as a go-to. So now I'm gonna go through each category again, pick out some new items, and we will then be able to satisfyingly place them inside these little baskets for this Shop My Stash. So that's what it's all about, as we all know, so I'm looking forward to that. I will be right back. So for primers, I actually have a new primer that I wanted to talk about. This is the Inglot Duraline, and I've had this in my collection for a while. I got it for like to use as a mixing medium for eyeshadow, but I was reading about people using this as a primer for like base makeup, and I actually did try it like under my eyes, and I had good success a few times. So I think I want to keep playing around with that and actually pull this to just keep out with my Shop My Stash stuff. So I'm gonna pull that out. And then as for this other stuff, I'm going to keep out the liquid Poreless Putty Primer from e.l.f. Again, just because this is like a mattifying primer. So this is one of the best times of year for me to be using this. And I think it's about like halfway done maybe. So I think I could get this little object out of my collection pretty soon, and then I'll still have the Poreless Putty Primer to do whatever this one does. So I'm gonna pull these two out for my rotation and put these back in my collection. Here are my foundations and concealers. This is what I use when I go out because I like the coverage and the lasting power a little bit better than this really, really sheer tinted moisturizer from ColourPop. However, I am trying to pan this, so I do naturally reach for both of these just for slightly different purposes. I use this when I'm filming, when I'm around the house and I'm putting on makeup just for fun. I also do, like I said, want to make more of an effort to mix these two together so that I can get a little bit more use out of those. So I will probably keep reaching for this if I really need something reliable, but for all intents and purposes, it's these two that I'm going to be pulling for my rotation and making more of an effort to use. So for bronzers and contours and stuff, I think I am going to put this contour product back. I'll probably be contouring a little bit less this rotation, but obviously if I want to, I can pull this out. This is the only contour product I own. And then I have this Phytosurgeon's Rosy Daybreak, more of a cooler toned rosy bronzer. Then I also have the Tan Lines Putty Bronzer from e.l.f., which is just more of a traditional warm toasty brown. For this particular season, I'm definitely leaning toward the rosy bronzer. I think that will be nice with some spring makeup. If you have this product, please tell me, have you found that it's been harder and harder to pick up over time? Because I know that they have like information about troubleshooting this on their website. I know it's supposed to be a really stiff, waxy product and you're not supposed to swatch it with your fingers, which I don't. But I did once accidentally get some sparkle in it, and so I kind of scraped away at it with my nail. I don't know if that might have done it, but I found that this is really, really hard to pick up, and it's harder than I remember it being at the beginning. And it looks like I get a lot less payoff from this than they do like on the Phytosurgeon's Instagram when I see the demos. So I don't know, let me know if that happened to you. I'm thinking about just scraping off the top layer as if it's like hard panned. I don't know, it's just such a unique product. I'm like a little bit worried to mess with the formula. I don't know, I really, really liked this when I first got it, but I've been reaching for it less just because like I have to swirl my brush in this for like 30 seconds to get like anything on the brush. Very weird. But yeah, I'm gonna pull this out, I'm gonna keep troubleshooting it, and maybe I will just like scrape the shit out of it and see what happens. And then I'm gonna keep this one in as like a warm toned option just because it's in my Deck of Panning project pan and I need this time of year to get the usage on this. I just know I'm not going to reach for a powder bronzer later in the season, so early spring is a good time to do that. So for this rotation of blush, I'm really going to be looking for like bright pinks and peaches. One of the ones I think about immediately is this shade Luminoso from Milani. I got this at the end of summer 2023 and I feel like I never really got to know it very well. It's really seems like such a summer shade to me that because I got it like at the end of that season, I haven't gotten a ton of usage on it since then. I think it could be a really nice peach color to wear in the spring. So I'm gonna pull this out. And let me just see if I can get a good swatch of this. Yeah, like it's pretty light. It's just a nice little peachy flush. This ColourPop blush sticks in the shade Roosevelt is in my project pan, so I'm going to keep this like out on my vanity in my acrylic organizer, even though I'm not really pulling it technically for my Shop My Stash. I have this sample size of the Rare Beauty liquid blush in the shade Joy, and I have been saving this for the spring. Full disclosure, I haven't had good luck with the other samples of this that I tried, and as you know, I'm a liquid blush noob, a liquid blush skeptic a little bit, but I wanted to save this and try it. I think this is my best time of year for making this work. I'm always hesitant to open samples just because once I do, like the clock starts ticking on using them up before they dry out. When I think of like a nice neutral pink color, I also think of this shade Between the Sheets from ColourPop. As I've mentioned before, this is like a really dried out Super Shock shade, so it's really hard to swatch, but it does pick up on a brush in this really, really sheer way that allows me to blend it really easily, so I actually really like that it's so dry. So you can see that's just a nice springy color, obviously very subtle, but I am gonna pull that out. The other thing I really want to pull out this time of year is this blush palette from e.l.f. I covered this with a sticker inspired by Mia's Virtual Vanity to, I don't know, do some bedazzling of my makeup. This is one of the easiest things in my collection to cover, so I started with that. Please ignore this, by the way. I need to scrape that out. It was a failed Franken attempt. I really like these top two shades for the spring. This is a pinky peach. This is a more orangey peach. And I think both of them will be really nice. They're also super, super sheer and emollient. So they're good for days when I'm like not wearing a ton of makeup and I want to have that like juicy, kind of springy, wishing it was summer kind of look. Let's see, for highlighters, I think I might actually pull this Pearl shade again, just because I still plan to be wearing like some springy, cool tones, like maybe some lavender or mint green. So I'm gonna keep this, I think that'll go well. I kind of keep this on my dresser all the time just because I'm trying to finish it. That's the shade Lunch Money. You can see it's like so close but so far kind of situation. The other thing I want to pull out this rotation is this MAC Strobe Cream in the shade Pink Light. Yeah, that's what it's called. And this is just a deluxe sample size. I don't really want to finish it because I like it a lot and I don't buy from MAC, so I won't be repurchasing it. So I think that has sort of like stopped me from using it. But like I can replace this with any liquid highlighter, so I really don't need to be holding back. I think having this in my Shop My Stash will convince me to pull it out a few more times because I really do love the way it looks. And this is a nice, like, subtle, juicy highlight for spring, so I think that will be really nice. So once again, lips is sort of like my big problem category right now. I have, believe it or not, decluttered a few since I last showed you this mess, but I still have more lip products than I am actively using, and I have stuff in here that I don't really know what my thoughts are yet. But again, for this rotation, I'm thinking cool pinks and warm peach. So I definitely want to pull out this. I mean, okay, this is kind of cheating. This is the shade Adobe. It's sort of like my go-to My Lips But Better. So I end up just having it on my vanity most of the time anyway, but I'll consider this part of my Shop My Stash because why not? This is just a nice warm peach. Let me compare that to this shade Nectar from e.l.f. It's a bit darker and a bit more pink than Adobe is, so that looks like a beautiful springtime color actually. I definitely want to pull that out. I'm definitely going to keep out this pink gloss. That'll be perfect for the spring. And so I pulled the cool toned hydrating core lipstick from e.l.f. last time called Happy. This time I'm going to pull the warm tone version that I have, which is called Cheery. And this is like a very bright coral, kind of almost orange. I have to say, like, I have trouble reaching for this. I haven't figured out how to make it work. It's a perfect candidate for Shop My Stash. I think it's also like very springy. Like when I was trying to pair it with like warm toned looks throughout the winter, it was like, it did not look right. Like this is a springtime peachy coral. And then for a couple of cool toned options, I definitely want to pull out this shade Toulouse from NYX. This is like a pretty mid-toned kind of pink. One of the pinker shades that I have in my collection. And this is another pink. This is called Rome. They're definitely kind of similar. I used to love the shade Rome as like a nude, but then I found that I reached a point where I was just putting it on and it felt like so much of a statement, like so much of a pink, that I was like, is this really the same shade that I was wearing so often as a nude? So I need to wrap my head around this one again, and I think maybe part of why I wasn't vibing with it was just because it was the wrong season, so I'm hoping that I will fall back in love with this one. I know I have a lot of options pulled already, but I think I do want to pull out this red. This is a very bright, like, orangey red. It's called Dancer from Maybelline. In my experience, this is actually a very unique formula. It becomes almost transfer proof, but it maintains like a little bit of stickiness on the lips, for lack of a better word, like a little layer of stickiness, which many people probably wouldn't like, but for me, I just have like a sensory thing about that dry matte lip. I always have to top that with a chapstick or a gloss, and then I end up like losing all the benefits that come with a transfer proof matte liquid lipstick. So this is actually the formula that I have had most success with as a bright, bold, like the kind of shade that you want to be transfer proof. And I think this is just a really fun, bright, springy color. If I can like wear this once during the next rotation, I will be proud of myself. So I'm gonna pull this out. Well, as you can clearly see, these don't fit perfectly, but I think it's enough for me to have them in their own little basket here that I can just like rummage as I need to. Anyway, this is the majority of my Shop My Stash collection. These two I will just keep out in my little acrylic organizer on my dresser, and this actually lives there all the time anyway, just because it's the only place it will fit. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you're having fun shopping your own stash, playing with your own makeup, and I hope to see you soon in future videos. Bye!